Hello everyone, I am Danny Flex and welcome to the latest edition of Seconds Out Live. And your eyes are not deceiving you. Not only am I joined by regular and reliable co-host Mr. Ayman Khan. What a compliment, reliable as an adjective. I apologise for that. But here is the man himself out in Riyadh, live via satellite from Riyadh. Radio
You remember
Rahim.
satellites? Yeah. I always did want to be live satellite when I was a kid. What's that?
You got a Ric Flair hoodie on.
The Nature Boy, the chairman, the Four Horsemen King, Ric Flair, none other than, of course, he inspires me. Who doesn't get inspired by the limousine driving, profiling Nature Boy, Ric Flair himself?
With a tear in my eye. I guess that makes you Bobby the Brain.
I'll tell you what, they could have called this card to be the man, you got to beat the man. This is definitely that kind of night come Saturday, so it's an appropriate aesthetic.
So I was doing a bit of research, as I'm obviously widely known for, and there's 3 world titles on the line, 3 interim world titles on the line, and 1 undisputed title on the line. So you could say 7 world title fights might be a little bit of a stretch. But for my money, 5 or 6 of these fights on the last crescendo card could be qualified as 50-50 or thereabouts. Is it the best card ever? Is it the best card in your time following boxing, Rahim?
Yes, it's the best card because from top to bottom, even if it isn't necessarily a 50-50 fight, it's not hard to imagine that either fighter wins. I would say probably Schofield's got the tallest hill to climb, but even that's not impossible. I would maybe liken it to Don King's Night of Heavyweights in New York. I believe that might go all the way back to 2004, something like that. But as far as also a consistent level, this is one of those kind of cards that is the product of all the rest of the Riyadh season shows. I mean that they built some of these fighters. We know Zhang because of Riyadh season, Kabayel all the same, that he was able to bring in Shakur Stevenson for the first time, something that would have been thought not possible at the beginning of Riyadh season events. There's so much talent on the card and so much opportunity for somebody to shine, and there's not one single fight that you want to miss. And I would have to say this, if not is the best fight card ever, you have to really be a historian to prove that out, but definitely the best fight card in recent memory, maybe even modern history.
So I was having a look through. Obviously, I came up in the early 90s, I suppose, in terms of getting into boxing in the first place. Not working in it. I'm not that old. Looks can be deceiving. And there's a Don King show. I think it was called The Rematches in the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, headlined by the rematch between Julian Jackson and Gerald McClellan. There's 5 world title fights on there, including the likes of Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., Azuma Nelson, Terry Norris. And that was the best one, I thought, out of a bunch of Don King multi-title shows in the 90s. And even that probably pales a little bit in comparison to what we're going to see on Saturday night. I mean, we don't know if every fight's going to be a banger, of course, on the night, but certainly on paper. And as you say, Floyd Schofield, the biggest mountain to climb, but still, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that you could imagine Sunday morning waking up with him as the new world champion. You spoke to Floyd Schofield today, and I watched the interview about an hour ago, and his calm, his composure really impressed me, considering not only is he a massive underdog, but it's his first time on anything like this level of event. How impressed were you by that, and does that give you more confidence in him against Shakur?
As you and I have been covering boxing for decades now, you can get a sense of a guy, even from the first time speaking to him. And what I like about Schofield is that he has a positive attitude. He's assured of himself, and he's not cocky about it, but he feels like he's got a job to do come Saturday night, and he'll be able to accomplish that work. I don't think that he is mistaken in his confidence and that he took the fight and he believes he can win. He thinks there's something in the Shakur Stevenson armor that is left wanting, and maybe he can expose it. I don't know what that is, but he believes that there is an opportunity for him to be a star overnight. And that's what will happen if he is indeed successful on the 22nd. It is a tall order. He's probably the least known name even here in Riyadh because all of these other fighters have fought on the card previous or have bigger names. But he would be the biggest standout, I would say, in America if he were to make this upset. Like, if there was anybody to win on Saturday night and get a huge amount of attention from the American fans, it would be Schofield.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great show, top to bottom, headlined, of course, by the rematch between Beterbiev and Bivol. And I saw also your interview with Israel Madrimov, where he was kind of giving some advice to Bivol about how to make sure he gets the win on the scorecards this time around. And he said it was very small margins. He said all that needs to happen really for Bivol is to attack a bit more in those last few rounds. He took his foot off the gas a little bit at just the wrong time. Is that how you kind of weigh it up as well, Raheem, that, you know, that it is incredibly fine margins in that fight?
Yeah, that's conventional wisdom. Even on the night, the first fight, most people who did believe Beterbiev won thought he won it in the final championship rounds. Thought that if Bivol had stepped on the gas or been consistent late and able to at least put a good showing on in the last 3 rounds, that it would not have been a fight they could take from him. It's on my fight card a unfair outcome in the sense that I don't score rounds based on my most recent emotion. And I had Bivol having banked enough rounds early to have edged the fight. I don't call it a robbery. However, I did have Bivol winning, and I wasn't waffling on that. I didn't even have a draw. I was like, Bivol won this fight. I could see it being a draw, but that wouldn't have been my result on the card. So yes, fighting at a faster pace, more effectively late, is something that if it gets to those later rounds, people have to be conscious of. But at the same time, I think it would be a mistake for him to overthink it. Like, go in there, do what you did last time better. Obviously, make some adjustments that keeps Beterbiev off you and more punch output, a little bit better movement. I would say early isn't the focus, right? It's more punch output, and winning these rounds comes down to the judges and what they like. But don't get caught up trying to figure that out. Just fight your fight and fight a better one than you did last time, and you should come away with the victory this time.
And talking of tactics, I've got one more for you, Raheem, before we let you go, because we know you're incredibly busy over there. But we got one of the chats here from Cuss's System. That's our friend Dennis. He said, love Radio's interview with Andy Lee. Managed to get details of tactics from the Parker team. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. Do you feel that Andy Lee was being completely on the level? Because he offered you a level of detail in that strategy that we don't normally see from trainers so close to a huge fight. Or is there a bit of bait and switch here, perhaps, that he knows that the Dubois team will watch the interview?
No, you know what? I think he was being sincere, and I appreciate it, because the truth is, at this point, it's baked in. Like, if you are about to start changing your approach because of what some other trainer said in an interview on the Monday before the Saturday of the fight, you're probably in a bad way yourself strategically. I don't think that Dubois or Don Charles is watching interviews trying to adjust their approach. And I don't think that what Andy said is something that, if Dubois hasn't prepared to counter already, will be able to counter on the night no matter what he knows, whether it's coming or not. So I appreciate Andy being a little bit more forthcoming than I would expect, but also it should be more common on fight week for people to be a little bit more forthcoming and to be more willing to talk about strategy and approach. Not, give any secrets away, but also nobody's reinventing the wheel here, right? It's not like Andy said something that was shocking. This is kind of what we would expect. And to talk about it, I think, adds a little flavor to the fight. And if I see that happening during the fight itself, then I'll know, okay, the game plan's working. And if not, I'm saying, okay, maybe they had to make an adjustment or they're getting done. This is the kind of thing that makes the fight more exciting and also gives us something new to talk about during fight week. So good on Andy. I hope he starts a new tradition, starts a new normal, because I don't think he's losing anything from the team for having said that, and it gives us something more to talk about, give us a little bit more knowledge than we would know otherwise. So yeah, I appreciate him saying that.
And if Andy wants to make that new normal exclusive to Seconds Out, we would not complain. I think that's fair.
We'll check in with him on the Monday of every fight in the week and make sure he only says it to us.
Even
and
if
then we'll keep it to ourselves. I hope that we hear more of that from the fighters and the trainers themselves. Like, come on, guys, we're a few days out. Give us something a little bit new.
Fingers crossed. Raheem, really appreciate it. I know you want to go off and get some more big-time interviews. We'll look forward to seeing that for the rest of this fight week here on Seconds Out. But thanks for joining us. And let's catch up soon.
I'll be tuning into you fellows for the rest of the show. Thanks for having me on, and I'll try to keep bringing you some more content before you're done.
Woo! We still got the audio of Raheem's Ric Flair there. It's an interesting one. I don't want to kind of generalize. I think it was probably not as good an impression as Jay Lethal's, but that's one for the wrestling purists out there. Ayman, how are you, mate? We didn't really get to speak. We brought Raheem in. And I got starstruck, and I forgot you were there. I mean, what's going on? How's everything?
We've gone from Radio Rahim to cassette player Ames.
Discman, Sony Discman.
Yeah, something Walkman.
Yeah, it could be a Walkman.
Walk Ayman. Yeah, it's a terrible, terrible drop down. There's levels to this game, that's for sure. But nonetheless, whether we're wallowing at the lowest level, myself at the highest level over in Riyadh, covering the last crescendo, it's great to be in Seconds Out live with all you guys in the chat, leaving your comments as we discuss what is a monstrous card this weekend with big ramifications in the sport that we love.
And as you'll see from the headline, we will be talking about the heavyweight fight, first of all, even though it's not the nominal main event. Probably has the most interest for casual viewers and also for fans here in the UK between Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker. But before we get to that, let me just remind people or introduce to new viewers that we are the most interactive show on boxing YouTube. SO Live would really like you to give us a thumbs up if you haven't already, a subscription if you're not already a subscriber. And please do get all your questions and comments in via the live chat, and we will get through as many of those as we possibly can before the end of the show. And there will be a poll as well. I haven't put it in our group chat yet, so it's not Modfather Vinny's fault, it's mine. But I will get a poll up and ready very, very shortly. But let's go to the chat for the first time today, apart from Dennis's one message. Yeet, I assume you're a Jey Uso fan, says, come on then, lads. First question right here. Who would win in a bare-knuckle scrap between Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom? It always seems like one of those funny questions, like, would you rather fight, a duck, or is it a duck-headed this or 8 duck, I know what I'm talking about, even if you guys don't. Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom on the cobbles. I feel like Cole Frott should be here judging this one. My money would very much be on Hearn. What about you, Ayman?
Yeah, I think knowing Ben up close, one of the worst things you could probably have for a boxer is a bit of a easy target for a top half, i.e. your head. He's got quite a big head. I think mine's quite normal size, but Ben's got quite a big head, and I don't mean ego. So I think Eddie Hearn, who has some boxing experience. I know that a certain YouTube channel has always kind of quoted out his experience, whether it's real or not. But I do believe that Eddie does have a bit of a pop bang to him, and I think he would find Ben Shalom out the ring before Ben Shalom could counter.
I'm not surprised by your choice of winner. The fact that it was Ben Shalom's big head proving the difference was a bit of a surprise. DB Cooper 1, holy shite! What an honour to be joined by the legendary Radio Rahim, who TV could not kill. It wasn't it video killed the radio star, not TV. Come on, it was Buggles, wasn't it? Was it Buggles? Going back even further than the Julio Cesar Chavez card there. Joe says, I remember that Don King card had to wait 3 months for the results in the Ring magazine. Should have been on Boxing News, mate. It's a weekly magazine. I've got the results much quicker than that. I used to love going to buy my Boxing News on a Friday, I think it was then. Black and white. There was only one newsagent near me that sold it. It was right at the back of Watney Market in Shadwell, East London. Took me, 20, 25 minutes to walk there. But yeah, I spent ages reading it as well. It wasn't one that you just flick through and it'd be gone like the Metro. No offense. But yeah, used to love Boxing News back then. It's more than anything what got me into the sport. Joe also says it was on ITV, but I had school in the morning. I remember when those shows used to be on ITV because this was Chavez's rematch with Frankie Randall. But I remember watching his rematch with Meldrick Taylor around the same era. I think it was actually the fight before. And that was also on ITV in the early hours. I used to record it. We had a VCR. Those were the days. And used to watch it the next day. DB Cooper one says, this is so random, but I was watching Saturday Night Live and a Michael Chi podcast popped up in my recommendations, hosted by Radio Rahim. Love it. Random as fuck. Two worlds collide. Jack Swagger. We're getting all the wrestling references today. Jack Swagger. Radio asks great questions and doesn't take soft answers. His guests respect him and that helps. Andy Wyatt finally managed to get an account. Hi, Dan, the heart emoji, laugh emoji. Andy, you were such a vital, integral part of the podcast that we used to do, old episodes of which are still available on Spotify, YouTube, so on. So we're glad you can finally join us in a new era. Jack Swagger, again, salutations, Sony Ayman and Danny Discman, first-time viewer. I think maybe iPod in a tribute to the old iPod. Big Chungus, this show deserves more views. Well, Big Chungus, you seem like a popular guy. Tell all your friends, encourage all your pals to watch, either live or on playback. David Hyde asks, who wins Froch versus Paul? We'll get to that later if we get a chance, but I think there's enough big fights on this huge card in Riyadh to keep us going. DB Cooper 1, Ben Shalom is a yardie with Jamaican roots. No, I'm not gonna do it in the patois accent, I'm afraid, DB Cooper 1. Andy White says, Hearn all day long and twice on Sunday. Too big, too strong. Beautiful Golden Dragon. How come Capote and Greg Dad Guy never travel abroad like Radio Man? I think you'll find that Ayman does travel abroad for work and pleasure. For me, I have reached a position and more importantly, a stage in my life where I'm not that keen on traveling so much anymore. I've got an 8-year-old son who needs a fair bit of looking after, keep him off the streets, keep him out of trouble. He's in the other room watching God knows what on YouTube. Definitely not this at the moment. But yeah, so I don't really like to travel so much anymore. When I was back on Boxing News magazine days, I used to be out somewhere, either abroad or somewhere else in the UK, every 2 weeks for probably about 5 years. And that was enough for me. I loved it. Absolutely loved it in my 20s. But yeah, now I'm in my 40s. I'm not so keen on it. But Ayman still goes out and about. It just depends on the show and if it's appropriate and stuff. But yeah, we don't keep him caged up. We have to let him spread his wings. Zambanu Love says, Billericay Iceman on points. That's Eddie Hills. Jack Swagger, Ben Shalom is a 10-year practitioner of Krav Maga. Don't sleep. Yeah, Ben's head is a big target, though, admits Jack Swagger, as Ayman pointed out. Andy White agrees it was Buggles. Video killed the radio star. Zambanu Love, Hearn's punches might slide off Ben's greasy face. Jesus. Zambanu Love's gone in. DB Cooper 1, bloody hell, Flexen grew up in East London. If only he bought a house in his 20s back in the 1960s for 20 quid, he'd be a millionaire by now. Very nice, DB Cooper 1, very nice. 8-year-old kid back in my day, he'd be up a chimney and putting food on the table. World's gone woke. Yeah, I mean, I haven't ruled that out. I just don't think you get a lot of call for chimney sweeping these days, to be fair. Big Chunga says, red suits you, Ayman, with a big heart emoji. Ayman, have you started dressing for your fan base now? I have to ask.
No, you know what? This is a present from my parents when they came back from holiday, and I'm not a big fan. I've actually hidden the brand that it is because I don't like wearing brands at all. But I got nagged. Oh, we got this, and you haven't worn it, blah blah blah. So put it on. No,
is that your mum or your dad? You were just channeling there.
That was my fair mother. Actually, as opposed to
I'm sure she'd appreciate that impression.
Well, truth is the truth. So yeah, I've just stuck this on new. A little bit tight because I've put on a couple of pounds of weight, which I'm trying to shed off before the end of the week. But if people like it, then maybe we'll see more of an appearance of it over the coming weeks.
Dennis Cuss's System says, is Ayman or Radio going to get an interview with Don Charles? They have done so previously, and Don has kept very quiet up until now. It's not uncommon for Don to keep quiet until fight week. But I would imagine he and Radio are quite close. So I would imagine he will give an interview to Rahim while they're out in Riyadh. Craig the Monkman, best nickname I've ever heard, says, big up the boys. Big up yourself, Craig Monkman. Conveying ideas, missing a Y. I'm sure there's a reason for that. Says, will Ben Shalom still be in the game after his Sky contract? And will Simon Jordan still be funding? Because Boxer is washed more than Jared Anderson. Wow. Take that, Jared. It's catching a stray there. Completely unrelated. DB Cooper 1, my mate Lewis Hart, now of the Ring magazine, runs under 12 kid fight clubs that live stream for Chinese betting syndicates. Very Squid Game of you, DB Cooper 1. put the 8-year-old kid to use. I mean, he goes kickboxing every week, as regular viewers of the show will know. So he'll be there later on when I leave Ayman for 10 minutes. So yeah, we'll see. If he starts getting any good, I'll consider it. Be like, what is it? No, McClellan used to dog fighting, didn't they? Which we obviously frown upon. 8-year-old kids, fine, but not dogs or chickens or anything like that. But let's get to the show itself. It is The Last Crescendo. Not a great title, if I'm honest. Sorry, Turkey. Brilliant show, though. You know, best show ever. And, you know, I'm just going to have a minor quibble about the name of it. Yeah, nominal main event, as we've said, is Beterbiev Bivol 2. But the one I'm certainly most interested in, and will probably have the widest ramifications in terms of the marquee division going forward, is Daniel Dubois defending that IBF Heavyweight Championship against Joseph Parker. In a fight that, and I've said this on the show before, I was pretty surprised that the Dubois team decided to make. It's a voluntary defense. They've got a final eliminator between Bakoli and Ajagba for the IBF coming up. Then you've got another IBF eliminator, which we've just seen, where Derek Chisora defeated Otto Wallin. So there's the challenges are stacking up for Dubois, and there's also the strong possibility that there'll be a chance for the winner of Saturday's fight to challenge Alexander Usyk in an undisputed title fight. Is this too big a risk for Dubois, Ayman, in your view?
No, I'm fairly confident in Daniel's chances, strong chances in getting the victory over Joe Parker. I'm hearing a lot of, and Joe Parker will have a lot of confidence heading into this fight, having dispatched of Deontay Wilder, a big puncher, Zhilei Zhang, a puncher with skill as well too, and he'll feel that, look, Dubois' big thing, big asset is his punch, and I've negated 2 heavy hitters. I might have had to take a couple of licks on the way down to getting the victory, but I can do that with Daniel as well, and I get that. I could see that. But I think Daniel is way too fresh in the game, riding with the rocket of confidence himself in the fight, and has that extra level of punch power to see him through to a victory. I think this is one where, look, Joe's going to move and be on his bike for a lot of the fight, but you're in with a guy who's capable of closing and shutting down a ring very effectively. I doubt he's going to draw Joe into a firefight by any means, because Joe is definitely outgunned in the fight, but he'll have to take punishment. He'll have to ship it in order to give it back and pick up points. It's whether he can do that enough and hold and stop the breach of in terms of the distance from Dubois getting in and landing those big shots on him. And I think he will, but I don't think he will for long enough. And it will tell around the mid rounds. I'm giving the prediction away here, but might as well. Rounds 5 to 7 is where I think the fight gets stopped and Daniel Dubois gets his hands raised. I'm not saying by any sort of stretch that Joe Parker can't win, but for me, if I was a betting man through Quiff, I would be picking Daniel Dubois to get the victory.
That was smooth. That was almost seamless. Yeah, so we've got Ayman's prediction there, but we want yours. So we are going to put the poll out on that fight. Dubois versus Parker. Just tell us your method of victory. Dubois points, Parker points, Dubois KO, Parker KO. Let us know what you think and tell us your rationale in the chat itself. Jack Swagger says, Ayman doesn't show the logo on the sweater. You have to pay for that product placement. You got to wait for that, as long-time viewers of The Sopranos might reference. Martin Mulligan says, Seconds Out Live, perfect for all us boxing nerds. What a card. Can't wait for Saturday. Conveying Ideas says, rather than The Last Crescendo, should have called it The Bollocks. I certainly would have preferred that. I don't know how that translates into the Saudi tongue. Beautiful Golden Dragon asks, where did Capote's parents go on holiday? Looking for somewhere in May. Thanks. When did this become a travel show? Ayman, where did your parents go?
I went back home, so back to the roots in Pakistan. So I don't know. It depends on what sort of level of travel you want to do. I've seen a couple of influencers who've gone to India, Afghanistan, Pakistan. My parents are like right from the border in the hills. I remember when I was a kid, been twice, and one of the memories is a very scary memory where you're going through the mountains and there's no like barriers to stop you from falling. There's rocks coming down from the mountains as well. It's a very treacherous road. So it's a long and winding path to get there. So wouldn't quite advise it for the faint of heart, but definitely a place that you want to visit if you're so inclined to travel in the world.
Zambani Love says, show's only possible because Bivol and Beterbiev aren't big names. We won't see a better card than this. Jack Swagger says, agreed, best card, bad name. Should have called it Bish Bash Bosh. These names are brilliant. I'm grateful for the last crescendo. The more of these I see. Craig the Monkman. I personally thought Bivol was robbed, but I didn't take into consideration that Artur had a knee rebuild, so I'm going Beterbiev this time. Conveying Ideas says Dubois within 8. Andy White's predictions are Parker, Stevenson. I mean, not too much of a stretch on that one. Sheeraz, Madrimov, Smith, Kabayel. Yeah, I mean, that's not far off mine, I don't think. Yeah, I'm going to have a think about a couple of those, though, as we go through it. Conveying Ideas, Dubois has always had the tools, but it's like he just found the instruction manual. I mean, if you know Dubois, that's, a distinct possibility. Jack Swagger says Beterbiev will win. Mike Mulligan says if Parker wins, it will be boring, but fancy Dubois by knockout. Craig Monkman, if Dan has took Parker seriously, which I don't think he has, he should have too much power for Big Joe late on. And Andy Wyatt, if Parker stays on the outside 5 to 6 rounds, he wins. Dubois will tire and Parker will outpoint him or stop him late. So, Ayman, you've kind of given your prediction there. For me, I've backed Parker since this fight was first announced. I didn't think Team Dubois should have taken this fight. I admire them for doing so. The most on-form heavyweight challenger they could have picked, and it's a voluntary. They could have had anyone in the top 15 for the IBF, and I haven't looked at their top 15 recently, but I can imagine there's some right stinkers, some right no-hopers on that list. I just think Parker, he's on great form, and he's very good at negating the style, and I have to give Andy Lee some of the credit for this as well, at negating the style of the person they go up against. And if you've seen Radio Rahim's interview with Andy Lee, you'll know that they're planning to use Dubois' jab against him. And I don't think that means they're going to bend him at the elbow and smash his own face in, but I do think they're going to know how to negate that jab and how to use it as a key to unlock some of their own counters that they think will prove pivotal. So I do think Parker will come out on top. I think he will probably win on points or maybe a late stoppage. I know Andy Lee in the sit-down, I've seen clips of it, like I know it's not called The Gloves Are Off anymore because that belongs to Sky. But whatever it is called now, he implied about Daniel Dubois quitting from fights in the past and how that could come back. He could revert to type, I believe was the phrase used when he's in a difficult situation. I'm not sure I see that. I think Dubois is a more mature, sturdy, tough guy these days. But I just think he could get old manned a bit by Parker. He could get outboxed, and Parker will use all the tricks in the book. And I think he'll come out on top, and we will see a new champion. I'm not sure I'll go as far as agreeing with Buddy McGirt in an as yet unreleased interview on Seconds Out, where he says if any heavyweight can beat Alexander Usyk, it is Joseph Parker. I'm not sure I'll go that far. But yeah, I do fancy him to come out on top in that one. I'm just seeing who I've missed on the chat. Andy White says, missed the main event. I thought Bivol won the first one and would go the same again. Jack Swagger, I think Parker wins on points. His boxing IQ will help him weather Dubois' early pressure. It will drag on with Parker besting Dubois on points. That's pretty much how I see it. Beautiful Golden Dragon says, thanks both. Would love to go to Pakistan. Which mountain range is it you recommend? Love a bit of abseiling. Jesus, we're really getting into the weeds in this travel story. Ayman, any particular mountain range?
I wouldn't know the name of the mountain. What I'll do is I'll send you I'll put in the chat here the Instagram link to the guy who I've seen going around countries in that sort of area, and you'll kind of get an idea as to what I'm saying. But my geography is terrible in the UK, let alone countries abroad, so I couldn't quite pinpoint a direct location.
Who had Ayman down as being the modern day Judith Chalmers? I do not know. And you don't. I'm sure you don't know who that is either. Conveying ideas. Go on.
I wasn't born.
No, you weren't born.
No.
Channeling your inner Josh Hart there, who's enjoying some annual leave at the moment. So big shout out to Josh Hart. Conveying Ideas says, do you think people just see Dubois as a come forward fighter and underrate his counter-punching skills? I feel people look at Dubois' media persona and take too much from that. That boy is always dialed in. I think Dubois is a very skillful, technically, traditionally technically good fighter. I'm just not sure he can adapt on the fly. I'm not sure he's got that level of flair or initiative to do that. Whereas I think someone like Parker, he's more experienced. He's been around the block. He can fight in many different styles. I think he's got a bit more variety and a bit more adaptability as well. DB Coupon says, this weekend's fight card is a little too good. Wish it was spread over 2 weeks. Anyone know the timings? Yeah, please do say in the chat if you do. Jack Swagger says Dubois had a peach of a counterpunch against AJ. Was that luck or training, though? I think they did practice that exact shot. If AJ were to fall short with his right hand to do that snappy counter. But, you know, you would expect that sort of opponent-specific preparation anyway, wouldn't you, from any top-level fighter? Andy White says the job Parker did on an admittedly shot Wilder and Zhang was an Andy Lee masterclass. Would expect the same with Dubois. He will have a great game plan and look very confident at the presser. Zabanu Love says, why is Billy Nelson still talking about a fight in Kinshasa? Congo is going through civil war at the moment with M23 already taken over East Congo and stated they want Kinshasa. How many palms would need greasing? Yeah, we could talk about Billy Nelson perhaps another time. Craig Monkman, Dubois also has brilliant footwork. That is certainly true. Conveying ideas. Frank Warren predicted that shot months before. Yeah, so I mean, I think they all knew what they were planning. So let's just get back to what we need to. We've talked about what we consider the main event, I suppose, but there is a whole other card. As I mentioned at the start when Radio Rahim joined us, there are, 7 world title fights? You could say 1 undisputed, 3 world and 3 interim world. So quite a lot going on. But we'll try and get through them one by one, hopefully in the next 20 minutes so I can take my son to kickboxing and then Ayman can start segment 3 perhaps. But yeah, Ayman, I suppose a good place to start. Which fight, apart from the one we've already discussed, are you most looking forward to on the show?
Oh, it's so hard to say. I think we can X off Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. I probably would say the same with Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Israel Madrimov. I know Madrimov is a bit more exciting than Shakur Stevenson, but I think that'd be more of a boxing skill type of affair for Madrimov to get the victory. Maybe late on it gets more into a firefight. Buatsi versus Callum Smith will probably end up in a firefight later on in the fight. The way that Buatsi does look to impose on his opponents, but Callum will try and keep as much distance as he can as possible as well. But that could turn into one. I'd probably take those out the running. It's so hard to say. I think Beterbiev versus Bivol is going to be similar. I'll hold off on my analysis on that for the moment, but I'd rule that one out too. Dubois versus Parker. I think for me, Adamez versus Hamzah Sheeraz has got the most the highest likelihood of being an absolute just highlight reel rock'em sock'em type of affair, and either fighter could win that fight. I think that's a brilliant matchup between the two of them, and whoever wins that fight will be feeling the effects of it the next day, but we'll also be feeling the adulation of the crowd for serving up an entertaining battle.
So Jack Swagger, DB Cooper 1 says, I'm surprised they threw Dubois into the deep for such a risky fight for his first fight post-world title. Riyadh season money changing the game. Just to remind people, we are asking method of victory for Daniel Dubois against Joseph Parker in our poll. So please do vote if you haven't already, as well as giving us a thumbs up and a subscribe. Big Boy Garm says free money at the bookies going on this one. Daniel Dubois win. Craig Monkman, Hamzah is a class act. Just not sure if this is a step too far too soon. Sasha English says Daniel will win. Any relation to Chris Eubank Sr., Sasha? Andy White says Buatsi versus Smith. I think that will take off and be exciting. That's actually the one I'm most looking forward to, which I'll talk about in a minute. Andy White says Sheeraz would be my next pick, proper 50-50. DB Cooper 1, Sheeraz fight is a huge step up for him, in my opinion. If he wins, that world title is thoroughly deserved. We need Brits with titles. The Yanks Mexicans still clowning us over Jack Catterall. We will be talking about Jack Catterall's defeat to Arnold Barboza at the end of the show, segment 4. So please do hang around if you want to talk about that. Zambanu Love says Hamzah still looks quite stiff. Hopefully he's not another Callum Smith. I mean, Callum Smith did get to a world title and has only lost to Beterbiev and Canelo. So he could do a lot worse than being another Callum Smith. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's start with Ayman's pick, the one he's looking forward to, and let's go through predictions for that. Hamzah Sheeraz against Carlos Adamez. Big gap in experience, but I'm not sure. I think the gap between Hamzah's recent opposition and Adamez is as big as some others in the chat seem to. I thought the Ammo Williams win, while not spectacular on the eye, was certainly achieved with efficiency, ruthlessness, and a boxing IQ that belies Sheeraz's experience levels. I think he'll beat Adamez. I think his physical advantages give him an edge just to start with. And I think if he boxes the way he needs to, and he's got an underrated trainer in Ricky Funes as well, I think he'll get the job done. I think this could be a star-making performance on the big stage for Hamzah Sheeraz. And he's used to a big stage. He's been brought through incredibly well by his management and the Frank Warren promotional team, I have to say as well. They've done an expert job of guiding him into this position and getting him a world title shot. I very much favour him to win. Ayman, what's your prediction for that one?
Yeah, it's so tough. Honestly, it's genuinely really hard for me to call. I remember when it came to the 5v5 and that fight with Sheeraz and Williams, I picked against Hamzah Sheeraz and I was clearly wrong for picking against Hamzah. What made me kind of feel that way was as Hamzah stepped through the levels, I guess the height, the weight advantages that he had didn't quite tell as much in his favor against the opponents as they rose in levels. And he's had a couple of moments where he's got caught and had to shell up. And, you know, with an experienced fighter like Adamez, you can capitalize on those moments and you might find yourself getting up off the canvas and looking at the count of the referee. I do. It's just, for me, it's just, I feel like either man here can get caught, honestly, and that might be enough of a moment. And Hamzah, he's a clinical finisher. He's learned from the moment where he dropped his opponent, then got dropped himself moments after. It might be a case of just that first break in the armor might tell for either of them. So hard to pick. I learned the lesson from the first time round of picking against Hamzah, so I'll go with Hamzah, but it's a 51 versus 49 for me. Real tight fight. Can't quite call it.
Fair enough. Conveying ideas says biggest question mark is Smith versus Buatsi. Can't pick a winner. Mucky says if Parker can negate Dubois' jab, and bear in mind Dubois Parker is our poll, so please do vote for your preferred method of victory. If Parker can negate Dubois' jab, I think he will beat Daniel on points, if not stop him late. Brian Petrov says Agit versus Zhang will steal it. Agit is a tremendously underrated fighter. I fancy Kabayel to win that, actually, but we'll get onto that fight. Conveying Ideas says Hamzah is good for the win, I think. Late stoppage, 9-11. Trap Lord says, where the hell is Radio Rahim? I mean, to answer that, literally, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia would be the answer. He did join us for the first 10 minutes of the show, so you might want to go back and watch from the start. Martin Mulligan says Hamzah jab will be key, I think. The one I'm most looking forward to is Joshua Buatsi against Callum Smith. For me, it comes down to exactly how much Callum Smith has got left. I think Buatsi is a very, very good fighter, very physically strong, hits hard, does everything good. I don't think there's anything in his game that's amazing, like 5 stars, but I think he's a solid 4 stars in pretty much every area. The only worry I have about Buatsi is whether he can take it up a gear when he really needs to. He seems to kind of fight to the level of his opposition at times. I haven't seen him look truly explosive and exciting since he beat Ricards Bolotniks quite some time ago. But he does keep winning, and that's an underrated skill. With Callum Smith, as I said earlier, he's only lost to Canelo when he was seriously injured and still went the distance. And Beterbiev, who, got the job done, pretty much destroyed him. But that doesn't mean that Callum Smith's finished. Buddy McGirt, his trainer, and I suppose he would say this, but says he's seen a new Callum Smith, a more motivated one than he saw in the previous training camps. But because we didn't see him in the ring for very long in his warm-up fight, we don't know quite what he's got left. But if he's at his best, I think he can control the range and the pace of the fight for the most part against his former GB amateur teammate. And I think he could pull off what would be perhaps a mild upset with the bookies. I haven't looked at the odds. But I do fancy Callum Smith to come through probably on points because I think Buatsi's incredibly tough. And I think it'll be a close fight as well. But I think he can beat Buatsi in quite a similar way to how Buatsi's been winning his recent fights. Kind of staying with him, being competitive, and then just pulling away down the stretch when he needs to, old manning him to an extent. Ayman, which way do you see that one going?
Funny, Danny, because we might be on opposite sides of the coin for a few of these fights. I know we both picked Hamzah Sheeraz here just about, but I actually feel your analysis, apart from the old manning part.
Did you pick Parker? You picked Dubois, didn't you?
Dubois, yeah.
Yeah, so we're on the opposite side of that one as well.
Yeah, so everything that you said about how Callum Smith gets the victory over Buatsi, I feel is exactly how Buatsi gets Callum Smith on the end of a defeat by points as well too, and possibly open to maybe stopping him. I don't think ambition and desire is a question mark over Callum Smith, but when the going gets tough, like, will that be in his mind? Will that be something that plays a factor, having been at the top of the sport against someone who's still striving to get to world title contention in Joshua Buatsi? Joshua fights at such a pace, and the power never really is varied all that much. The guy is just straight on you and thudding on you right from the start. Joshua Buatsi has shown for me that he can come through a level of adversity, although he does ship far too many shots, and in the face of someone who's a sharpshooter like Callum and can pack a bit too, he's got to really kind of contend with that, and he can't rely on his chin like he did against Willie Hutchinson. But Hutchinson threw the kitchen sink and more at him and got up off the deck to continue, but still couldn't dent Josh Buatsi either. And I just feel like that momentum that Buatsi is now finally on will see him through to a victory over Callum Smith in a real competitive fight. But I think he'll be a winner in a 116, 112 type of fight.
Wow, okay. All right. Dividing lines have been set between myself and Ayman. Zambanu Love says Callum's best win is still either old one-armed Groves or Ryder. I mean, Ryder probably should have won that, though. Below, think the likes of Ndo. Don't think Callum was ever that good. Buatsi should win. Interesting. What's Buatsi's best win? If we're talking about best wins as a kind of stick to beat Callum Smith with, what do you class as Buatsi's best wins? Zambanu Love. Craig Monkman says it's only Buatsi, Callum Smith that I can't pick a winner. Both very good boxers. Andy White says Sheeraz power and timing. I can't see anyone at that weight beating him. He'll be walking into the ring at 180 pounds plus. Jack Swagger is excited to see Shakur back in the ring again. Anybody have intel on Schofield? You should probably watch Radio Rahim's interview with Schofield, actually. Not right now, please stay, but it'll be interesting. He impressed me. His manner impressed me. Conveying Ideas says Sheeraz will be tested, but don't see him losing. Ra Hokum, welcome Ra. I replied to Adamez's tweet that may have been prevented boarding his flight as part of the disruption to his plans. Got an email from someone in the industry telling me to shut up. I bet that's not the first time you've had an email of that nature, Ra, although maybe not always from people in the industry. Craig Monkman, oh no, I've read that one already. Mucky, if Callum Smith turns up, I think Buatsi is in trouble. Conveying Ideas, Buatsi toughs out fights, but seems like there's only two gears. Winner of Buatsi Smith for Benavidez, he asked. You've got to think the winner of Buatsi Smith being guided towards the winner of the main event, no? The fact that they're on the same show and it's an interim world title fight. Obviously, Buatsi's got that WBO interim title already. Got it from Willie Hutchinson or in the Willie Hutchinson fight. Ra Hokum says his former opponent, Luke Blackledge, thinks Callum has too many miles and Bugatti, I think he means Buatsi, is wrong for him. Maybe that was an intentional pun. Jack Swagger says Danny's assessment of Buatsi is accurate. He fights the level of his competition. Never seen him blow out decent opposition. Andy White says Callum Smith has fought at a higher level than Buatsi, and if he's on form, that left hand is lethal. Craig Monkman, I think Benavidez is too much for both of them. Yeah, let's steady on. Let them have this fight first. Conveying Ideas says no one mentions him or Morrell between these guys on the main event. Boogeyman vibes. I think the guys in the main event have already taken arguably their biggest challenges at light heavyweight by fighting each other. I don't think we should criticise them for avoiding anyone when they're in an undisputed title fight and they were both unbeaten going in. But yeah, that aside, a lot of respect for Benavidez. Zambanu Love says Buatsi has faced consistent level of opposition lately. Callum jumped from elite to very weak opponents. Yeah, I mean, after what happened against Beterbiev, I think he probably needed a confidence builder before going back into a tough fight. And this will be a tough fight for him. Yeah, I mean, you make your picks, don't you? And Ayman and I have come down on different sides of this one. Zhilei Zhang, Agit Kabayel, WBC interim title fight. The winner of that will be right in place, perhaps, to fight Usyk or Dubois, Parker, winner, I should say. Ayman, it's a tough one because we've seen Agit Kabayel win it in different ways. We've seen the aggressive side of him throwing lots of punches. We've seen movement and counter punching way back against Derek Chisora and more recently. But then you've got Zhilei Zhang, who always seems to fight the same way. He tells us every time that his conditioning's improved and he'll put up consistent pace through the whole fight, and he'll either struggle in the second half or he'll get his opponent out of there before it gets that far. He kind of is what he is at this point, given his age and his Olympic pedigree. What do you see happening in Kabayel against Zhang?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak to Kabayel and Zhang in the lead up, more so with Zhang a bit more time, because the Kabayel conversation was at the Ring Magazine Awards as he was making his exit. However, look, Zhang's team, I think, have pinpointed the glaring weakness in his game, and it would be for a 40-something-year-old heavyweight. As you get older, you start to tire, and the power stays with you, but the conditioning doesn't quite. And the conditioning's been a problem for a number of years for Zhilei Zhang. They've said that, look, we know that people think that our conditioning is poor, but we're looking to work on that. We'll see if the fruits of the labor are there at the weigh-in, and he's trimmed down a little bit in aid of being able to carry a bit more of that power and get the volume out over the rounds. Kabayel has been brilliant in his Riyadh season opportunities that he's been given. They've been at the lower end of the scale, but still good wins. Makhmudov was seen as the boogeyman, but wasn't the boogeyman at all. Frank Sanchez, although he was strapped up, Agit Kabayel was the one delivering the strap to Frank Sanchez, and he dispelled of him. But Zhang is another level. For me, although we haven't seen a dent put in Kabayel, I do think that with the power that Zhang has, and the power that, for me, it's a punch where one or two of those and you're in serious trouble, I think he'll find it. I think he'll find the punch. I think he'll get Kabayel out of there. Might be a little bit of a shot call, but I do feel that Zhang holds enough power to keep Kabayel off of him thinking. And if the pressure, the forward pressure from Kabayel doesn't start to tell early, then Kabayel might be in a lot of trouble. So I feel that Zhang gets him out of there, maybe in the mid rounds as well too, something around 5 to 7, like with Daniel Dubois.
God, we're going to have to turn this into a wager because I'm disagreeing again. Okay. I strongly fancy Kabayel. I think he's hugely underrated. I think he can win this fight in more than one way. I think he can stay safe enough to outwork Zhilei Zhang. I also think he can win on the back foot and pop out his punches until Zhang gets tired. And probably won't stop him. He's a big unit, but I think he can win comfortably on points. Massively fancy Kabayel in this fight. I actually don't see this as a 50-50. But yeah, I'm glad that we're disagreeing so much. It makes for better conversation and potential money earning for one of us as well. Let me just go to the chat before we get to, I think we could probably do one more before I have to leave Ayman for 10 minutes, as much as it breaks my heart. John Wick says, has there been any word about Josh Kelly? Silent since his last win. I mean, I haven't heard anything on the grapevine, but I will look into it now you've asked. Jack Swagger, who wins in a 3-round fight? Radio Rahim versus Eli Sekbak. I would strongly fancy Rahim in that one, I've got to say. DB Cooper 1 says, wasn't Adamez's visa issue simply that he tried to board his flight, enter the country before his visa started? Needs a better manager. Craig Monkman, Kabayel is in fine form. If he can take Zhang's power until he burns himself out after 6, he wins. It's pretty much how I see it going. Abdul Rahim says, a lot of bars and clubs not advertising the Bivol versus Beterbiev 2 and star-studded undercard. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible fight, particularly for boxing fans, hardcore fans. I don't know if it's got those casual crossover names like a show featuring a Fury or a AJ or a Canelo, for example. Jack Swagger says, if Zhang loses this one, I think his aura is done. If Zhang don't finish Kabayel in 4, it's a wrap, says Conveying Ideas. Mucky is picking Kabayel. I think he's very underrated. Zabanu loves Zhang. Sneaky right hook might catch Agit coming in. So we'll watch out for that on Saturday. Jack Swagger, Zhang has been working on his conditioning, so taking him into deep waters is not going to be a winning strategy. He says this before every fight. I swear to, even I've interviewed him personally and he says it. And then we see the exact same thing happen. So I'm not convinced. I'm not buying it until he does it. Until just to spite me, he wins on points on Saturday night. Can you imagine that? He's there. He can get a knockout against Kabayel and he thinks, you know what? Fuck that Danny Flexen, I'm going to show him. And he backs off and takes a, 118, 111. Street Kids United says, WTF, why does Radio have a whole weird UK guy on his page doing his lives? He crazy. Right, Street Kids United, I'm not going to have a pop at your questionable language skills there, but this isn't Radio's page. This is Seconds Out. We're a boxing media outlet. Radio Rahim does a lot of work for us, but he doesn't own the channel. And I'm sure he's happy to have us representing the same company as him. So mind your manners, or we'll have to put you on the naughty step, because that's how we do things on the UK side of the pond. Conveying Ideas says, Jack, disagree on the aura side of Zhang. It's the only positive I see. Andy White, Kabayel will dance around him long enough and stop Zhang late. Massively underrated and dark horse as a world champ. Ra Hokum, a Zhang win would set up the first heavyweight title fight in Beijing. Zumbanu Love, stronger, faster, quicker than a speeding bullet. DB Coupon says, Daddy, Daddy, cool, and Oi Zhang, are you going to bang for the win? Conveying Ideas says, S/O is a team prick. Oh, Seconds Out is a team prick. Yeah, I don't mind your lack of punctuation, Conveying Ideas, because you're supporting us. Gizor Glock says, who is this guy? Why is he on this live? Because I'm the host of SO Live, Gizor Glock, and I have been ever since it started over a year ago. You obviously don't watch. It's obviously your first time on the live, and you're welcome as long as you mind your manners. Right, and it's my turn to duck off. So, and I did say duck, dropping my son at his kickboxing practice. But Ayman, if you want to take over, maybe wrap up the rest of the mega show on Saturday night, and I'll be back for segment 3.
Absolutely. Okay. And let me know in the chat as well, too, what your thoughts on these fights as we brush through them, just to give you a little quick recap. Zhilei Zhang versus Agit Kabayel. I've gone for Zhilei Zhang by KO. Danny has gone for Agit Kabayel. We've talked about Carlos Adames versus Hamzah Sheeraz. We've both backed Hamzah Sheeraz to get the victory. We've talked Daniel Dubois versus Joe Parker. And Danny has backed Joe Parker. I've backed Daniel Dubois. Moving forward, then, Buatsi versus Callum Smith. We're both on the other side of the coin there. Danny with Callum Smith and me with Joshua Buatsi. Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. Look, I quickly crossed this fight off the conversation of most exciting and thrilling fights, and that is because of the passive but brilliant but passive nature in the way that Shakur Stevenson fights. Floyd Schofield, look, I think he's a well accomplished. He's a good fighter. I don't think he has enough skills to pay the bills and stop Shakur Stevenson earning the big bills as he looks for bigger fights in the sport against some of his American compatriots. So I believe that Shakur Stevenson gets the victory over points on probably the least exciting fight on the card. Moving forward to Virgil Ortiz versus Israel Madrimov. Sorry, another fight which I've closed off as one that won't be the most exciting. I think it'll be a real good clash of styles. Madrimov by no means is just a consummate boxer in the way that Shakur Stevenson is. Madrimov does like to wing in big, heavy shots, and he was so close to getting the victory over Terence Crawford in their fight not so long ago. And that's what I think which leans me towards Madrimov, because he's such a high level type of fighter. It might have come a little bit too soon against Crawford, but that experience will no doubt pay off in the long run. And that might be a real good win on the record of Terence Crawford as the years pass on, the way that Ismail Madrimov has been going. And he's at the lower, still a great fighter in Virgil Ortiz Jr., a fighter that I really like. I love his personality. I love the fact that he can shred guitar and shred in the ring as well, but not at the level of Terence Crawford. Fights a particular way, good fighter, searching and looking for the knockout. But that sort of style, I think Ismail Madrimov has seen throughout the years, whether it be in his professional or amateur days, barring anything big coming his way. I do see Israel Madrimov getting the victory, potentially a stoppage in that fight as well too, because I always look at Virgil Ortiz with a little bit of fragility, although it hasn't shown in the ring particularly, but because of the rhabdomyosis diagnosis that stopped him from getting in the ring a couple of times, you wonder whether that might show in a fight, and it might just show at the highest level. Someone like Ismail Madrimov, I think, can scout you, find your weaknesses, and then exploit it. So if there is something that will hold Virgil Ortiz Jr. back, Ismail Madrimov is sure to find it. But we'll only find out on fight night. Let me get to some of your comments before we jump back into more discussion. I don't think I've missed any other of the fights when it comes to the discussion. So let's jump into the chat. Where are we at? Andy W says Kabayel will dance around him long enough and stop Zhang late. Massively underrated and dark horse as a world champion. Now, yeah, I completely get it. I just with Kabayel, you just wonder like why hasn't this guy got there already? Son, it kind of flirted and flaunted around European level for the longest time, and you could say that Riyadh season has been the one that's been willing to give him the opportunities. I believe the whispers around Kabayel, he doesn't really need boxing by any means. He's got money from other businesses to keep him afloat. So you just wonder if the desire is really there to reach the top. And then Zhang, you'd think from a Kabayel perspective would probably be easy or the right timing for a fighter that, sure, with a lot of experience, but feet have slowed down considerably. Got a big punch, but and although he can punch with both hands, if his feet have slowed down and you're still fresh and you can still move, then you could find yourself and find those holes in the game and find yourself on the end of a victory as long as you keep moving. So there's definitely a game plan, a route to victory for Agit Kabayel, that's for sure. A load of messages just loaded up, so I think I'd stopped or started a little bit early. Abdul Rahim says, be respectful. Seconds out is for everyone. Absolutely. Seconds out is for everyone. Famo says, what do you think of Adam? Adam who? You gotta give me a last name so I can let you know. Big Idea says part-time friends. Yeah. It's welcome for everyone. Part-time and full-time. DB Cooper 1 says, won't be long till the transfer window opens and he swaps Lewis Hart for Radio Rahim. On the bright side, will help your PSR issues. Don't know what that means, PSR. But yeah, Lewis Hart, congratulations to Lewis. He's doing his thing at the ring. Long may it continue. Gizzle Glock says, I watch interviews, then you'll know who we are. Gizzle Glock, Danny Flexen and Ayman Khan here in the hot seats as well. DB Cooper says, I'm off to Tesco. Anyone, anything? I'm fine, thanks. Danny, did you come back from Tesco's? Did you pick anything up?
Who said I've been to Tesco's? Oh, it's DB Cooper 1's been to Tesco's, is he?
He has, yeah.
Charlie Rogers, American taking on Danny Flexen. Yeah, I've just told Rahim about it. I said a few of your fans, in inverted commas, are giving me shit on the live show. Gizzle Glock, nobody wants to listen to these trash accents. Wow. Go away then, Gizzle Glock. You have a choice, mate. Wow. What a handle as well. I'm back.
Do we bring Gizzle Glock on, Danny?
I struggle to. I don't know if we'd be able to communicate because he clearly struggles to understand us.
Yeah,
what we have here is a failure to communicate. I mean, no. I think I'll say no on bringing him on. But yeah, I said to Rahim, like they've obviously never watched the live before. We didn't put his face in the thumbnail or anything like that, but they're all expecting him. I hope it is more disappointment at the absence of Radio Rahim than disgust at the presence of these two, limey bastards. No, that's more Australian, isn't it? What do they call us, the Americans? What's like the jingoistic term of choice? Someone in the chat, let us know, unless it's really rude, in which case probably don't. Where did you get up to in terms of the fights? Ayman.
Oh, sorry, just a little bit of commotion outside my door. No, I got through all of them. I spoke about a Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield fight. I felt that Shakur Stevenson is going to sail to a points victory. Madrimov versus Ortiz Jr. I think Madrimov gets the win on points, possibly a late stoppage.
See, that's another disagreement. I think Ortiz is going to win.
Go for it, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, Madrimov looked great against Crawford, but I think not much was expected of him. I think not many people had heard of him going into that fight, and people assumed that it'd be a bit of an easy step up to 154 for Crawford and proved anything but he did still do enough to win the fight. Madrimov's very good technically, strong, good engine, but I just think there's something kind of undeniable about Ortiz since he moved up in weight and he had those health problems previously at welter. He's also very strong, great work rate, good variety, good body puncher. And I just think this is similar to Sheeraz, really. I think this could be a coming of age performance for Ortiz. And I do think he can get the job done. I'm happy to be proved wrong. And as Craig Monkman says, Madrimov is an absolute unit. But as I'm trying to just pick as many different winners to Ayman as possible at this point, I'm happy to go for Ortiz there as well. Zambanu Love says, if only Zhang turned over a few years before, would have been fun seeing him in the prime in big fights. Abdul Rahim says Hamzah Sheeraz will beat Adamez TKO. Conveying Ideas says, a lot of talk about Stevenson's hands. Thoughts? Heard anything about this, Ayman?
Yeah, so I believe one of the fight poster pictures depicting Shakur Stevenson and Floyd Schofield shows a scar on one of his hands. And I believe that is due to the operation he had, which pulled him out of the fight with Joe Cordina. So I think that people maybe seeing that as a weakness on Shakur Stevenson's part. But I mean, Shakur Stevenson, I don't know, he's not a particularly hard puncher. Like, you remember the stories of Amir Khan that he'd have really damaged hands off the back of his fights because of the speed and I guess the power as well too that was punching at. Shakur, I think, is someone who probably the tell in the pick of the gloves will tell if there's a problem or degree of difficulty with his hands. So wait and see on that one, really.
Abdul Rahim says Beterbiev points when he gets Bivol again. DB Coop 1 says they normally just make fun of our teeth. I haven't got bad teeth for a Brit, in fairness. Very one-dimensional, these Yanks. They couldn't point us out on a map, mind. Yeah, more stereotyping. That's what will solve this problem. Abdul Rahim says Madrimov beats Ortiz by points. Well, I disagree with you, Abdul Rahim, as I disagree with Ayman on that one. Conveying Idea says, I reckon it will mean he's going to be more confident in letting his hands go since he's had the op. I'm not sure Shakur Stevenson doesn't let his hands go more due to a lack of confidence. I think it's just not his natural style. He's always going to be someone that likes to use what the other fighter brings against them. He's got that kind of IQ and that approach. But yeah, I agree with Ayman on that he will win relatively comfortably. Craig Monkman, Shakur is technically sound but doesn't have enough power to keep any of the top fighters in the division off of him. Yeah, I'd have to have a look back over his record and see which kind of powerful pressure fighters he's beaten, if any, at the top level. Abdul Rahim is picking Shakur to win on points against Phil Schofield. Brilliant. That was a natural next step in the career of Philip Schofield, was to go into boxing at the late age that he is. But yeah, I don't think we'll have too many mentions of Phil Schofield on SO Live before or after this one. Yeah, so great show. And we were talking at the start with Rahim, but didn't really get your take on it. Is this the best card you can remember in terms of boxing in your lifetime and stuff you've looked back on as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult conversation for myself because I haven't had the breadth of experience and viewing pleasures or maybe displeasures some of the cards. Maybe you just have to sat through on ringside or on the edge of your seat at home. But for me, this seems like by far the best card from top to bottom. And usually when you have the big fights back in the day, I remember like what a Fury versus Wilder versus Fury the first time around, you just have a top heavy, the main event, and everything else is filled with fodder. And I think, what was it, like Luis Ortiz versus Travis Kaufman was the co-main to that one. It's just a load of a nothing event, really, nothing to look forward to. You're just waiting for that last hour or so, and this just isn't the case. It is like almost I talked about UFC-ifying boxing, but this is almost like WWE-ifying boxing, where you can look forward to a real pay-per-view. Where, I don't know, if you WWE this, like, what would you go as your curtain opener for this one? Because you'd want something hot straight away, and all of them seem like, apart from Stevenson versus Schofield, but the capacity to really open up a show and be a crowd pleaser. So yeah, look, a real stellar card. I've said this before, say it again, a properly stacked card in the face of when promoters say stacked cards. This actually is. So if anyone tries to tell you they've got a stacked card and it doesn't look like this, don't listen. But this is definitely one of them. Great
stuff. Now, we do have to end the show in terms of the segment order on rather a disappointing note, I suppose, for the UK and so on. I'm glad, I guess, that the Americans seem to have left now, because they probably wouldn't have. Oh, actually, if they might have been interested, because they could have crowed a little bit about Arnold Barboza's victory over Jack Catterall at the weekend. Bit of a surprise. I mean, the type of fight wasn't a surprise. Sat down to watch it on Saturday on the Zone. Was expecting a kind of, I don't want to say tedious, but certainly not exciting chess match between the two guys. But I just thought with the home advantage, recent form, the impetus, I didn't think Barboza would look that great in his last fight, even though he got the job done against a talented fighter who's maybe just past his best. I thought Catterall coming off that win over Regis Prograis and the revenge one over Josh Taylor, the momentum all seemed to be in his favour. He was at the Co-op Live, had all the fan support, and I really thought he'd up his game and get over the line. And while it was close and it could have gone either way, neither fighter really did enough to put their stamp on the fight and make sure of victory. And which is why, and Jack Catterall said this after the fight as well, you can't really blame the judges or say, well, I had myself winning, but didn't quite. At the end of the day, if you're not going to up your game when you need it most, and when most things, that are in your favour, you can't blame anyone but yourself. And I feel sorry for Jack. He's a really nice guy. He's worked really hard. He should have got that decision first time around against Taylor. And this was his big opportunity. And you've got to wonder, with the style he has and not being a huge draw, albeit, it seemed quite busy at the Co-op on Saturday, you've got to wonder how long it's going to be till he gets a chance again, even though he does have, obviously, a powerful promoter behind him. Ayman, you were there. What did you make of the fight and the result?
Yeah, I think Jack Catterall was probably kicking himself as the dust settles on this defeat to Artur Barboza Jr. I thought we were going to get standard Jack Catterall fare, really. The neutralizer is going to see his opponent, I guess, have a look at what he's got, and then just like he normally does, nullify his opponent's offenses and find the shots and find the holes and sail through to points victory. But I think part of the problem was Catterall started all right, but then those mid rounds he just gives them away. I don't know if it's a gas tank issue, but he just, or in terms of not giving it away, but also doesn't do enough as well. I think that's part of the problem with Jack. He does, I guess, just about enough to win in these higher level fights. Even Bob Arum had been complaining off the back of the second Josh Taylor fight that he felt that Josh Taylor had done enough to win. That definitely wasn't the case, but I guess that's the perspective that he and a few others had. But in this fight, it just felt like he really could have won the fight if he took the fight at the scruff of the neck. And Jack is somewhat of a passive type of guy. He's a good fighter who can find, like I mentioned, those holes, but just didn't find them enough in the fight. And I wonder, it's a very easy thing to point towards, but when you have Jack Catterall, who, and I'm not saying this as a slight, but I'm just saying this as context to the fight week, who didn't do a lot of interviews, slipped off, and look, if he doesn't like doing interviews, that's fair enough. And I was told behind the scenes that, look, he'd done a lot in the lead up to it, so I just wanted to slip off, and that's fair enough. But might it have been because he was trying to get down to the weight? You had a weigh-in as well, too, that was at 5 p.m. as opposed to around the usual time of 1 p.m. Now, it was ceremonial, but when we spoke to Eddie Hearn, when the media got the opportunity after the weigh-in, he did say, look, Jack Catterall, we had the weigh-in and the scales kind of showed this, and we had to readjust the scales and whatever. This might be someone who was having a tough time to get down to the weight, and that might have told on the night of being a little bit flat in there, not having that little bit extra to see him over the line. He might as well, too, throw out and say that maybe we could have had a knockdown on another night. Now, for my first viewing of it, being at ringside, I thought that was a 100% call of a slip, making Barboza fall to the canvas. But when I looked online, I saw a lot of people saying, no, that was a legitimate knockdown. A lot of people saying that was a slip as well, too. But referee's call was the case. And you'd think that, look, some people playing to the game of, you're coming over here to the home promoter's show, you might not get the favor, whatever it is, and that could have happened. And Barboza, in a tight fight, could have found himself on the end of a defeat. And I imagine Barboza's team as well, too, might have thought they would come to the UK and not get a victory even if they deserved it. But they did get it on the night. I don't really think there can be many complaints. Catterall could have won it. Barboza could have won it. I think Barboza was the right winner, but Catterall really and the team really should be kicking themselves and thinking, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again?
Brian Petrov says, you guys have a great channel. Keep up the great work, guys. Yeah, take that, American invaders. Abdul Rahim says, will we see a card like this again? I don't know. I mean, if we've learned anything about Turki Alalshikh and Riyadh season, it's that they keep trying to better what they've done in the past. So I say we can be hopeful. DB Cooper 1 says, today I learnt SecondsOut has the @boxing YouTube handle. Proper old timers, geez. It just looks more impressive when you can tell people to look at your channel and you say youtube.com/boxing. You know, there's a certain cachet, isn't there? I'm not going to hide from that. Abdul Rahim says, like, comment, share, subscribe. Great content and respectful. And also, please do vote in our poll. Abdul Rahim didn't say that, but I am. We're asking about the Joseph Parker, Daniel Dubois fight. Who wins and how? So please do vote if you haven't already. We'll be coming to the results before the end of the show. Craig Monkman, definitely the best card I've ever seen. I didn't think the first one could be beaten, but Turkey just keeps giving. I salute HE. Craig Monkman, I had it a draw. I'm assuming he means Catterall, but his chat got cut off at that point. Abdul Rahim, Keyshawn win, Abdullah Mason win, Barboza win against Jack Catterall. So American dominance, unlike in the chat. Pugilistic Soldier, is it the ending of Riyadh season being the last crescendo? I mean, if it is, that means Riyadh season's lasted, what, a year and 4 months, which is a long season by anyone's estimation. I don't think it'll be the last Riyadh season show. Beautiful Golden Dragon, do you guys know if there's ever been a gay boxer in the history of the sport? Researching for my dissertation. Well, Beautiful Golden Dragon, you're lucky you have a boxing historian on the staff here. And yes, there has, but I assume when you ask about a gay boxer, you mean, first of all, a professional boxer, and second of all, a male gay boxer rather than a female, because I think there's quite a lot of well-known female boxers who are gay. But on the male side, Orlando Cruz, former world title challenger from Puerto Rico, I believe at super bantamweight, came out during his career, maybe 5 fights or so before he challenged unsuccessfully, unfortunately, for that world title. But yes, I think he was the first one, or he's widely considered the first one as an openly gay boxer. Obviously, there's other fighters who we now know did have relationships with people of the same gender. Emil Griffith, perhaps the most famous example of that. But yes, in terms of openly gay male boxer, it becomes more and more niche the more you qualify it. Orlando Cruz is the one you're looking for. It might be worth Googling him. Teach says, toss-up fight, Jack could have done more. This fight was in stake for both guys since they've been in the rankings forever without a title shot. Yeah, because wasn't Catterall Barboza originally going to be a final eliminator? And then Jack chose to fight Prograis instead, and then they've come back and it's an interim title fight. Craig Monkman says, only Karis Artin School and Lauren Price that I know of. What about Terry Harper? Incredibly famous advocate of LGBTQ plus rights, for example. So she's another one, but there's loads on the female side, very openly. It's a weird thing. Female boxers feel they can be a lot more open about their sexuality than males, but I guess boxing being a traditionally macho sport, there's a bit more of a stigma around being openly gay as a male boxer than female. That would be my take on it. Teach says Jack lost this for himself, really. Abdul Rahim says, best card in boxing. Hardcore boxings will be watching it on Saturday. Novice boxing won't. Is that a good thing or bad? Well, it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking to grow the sport generally, then I suppose it's not great. But if you're just looking to have a great card for everyone who's presumably in the chat and watching this episode of SO Live, then I think it's great for all of us. Craig Monkman says, yeah, Orlando Cruz, as we've just discussed. And David Hyde says Orlando Cruz is the only one that comes to mind. Abdul Rahim says Arnold versus Jack was a 50-50. Don't let it go to judges in boxing. Teach is really looking forward to Zhang versus Agit Kabayel. DB Cooper 1 says, I think Dalton Smith and Adam Mazin beat Jack Catterall, to be honest. Very disappointing from him. Yet another Hearn loss. I think Jack Catterall's got a lot of untapped potential. I think he could do a lot more, but maybe he needs to be against real adversity or perceived adversity to bring that out of him. Maybe he thought, he went into the Barboza fight, I'm assuming, as the favourite. Abdul Rahim says, are we going to have AI judges to remove bias, favoritism, and corruption? I'm not sure that would have the effect of removing all of those things, but it's something we can discuss perhaps on a future episode. UK Hitters says, definitely not the end of Riyadh season. They have a card on April 26th, May 2nd, and May 3rd. James Byrne echoes what I said. Emil Griffith there about the gay boxers. Abdul Rahim says, will anyone watch Eubank versus Ben? Yes, Abdul Rahim. A lot of people, both live and live in the venue and on TV, I would imagine. DB Cooper 1 says Tyan Booth, a very zesty boxer. I don't think we're outing Tyan Booth on this particular episode. Zambanu Love asked Yusuf Mack. You might want to Google that to see what Zambanu Love's getting at there. Or you might wish you hadn't. Conveying Ideas says, I don't care who fighters sleep with, to be honest. Yeah, well, unless it's my missus, obviously. UK Hitters says, I ain't paying money to see Eubank versus Ben with that trash card. Conveying Ideas, too much bringing sex into places it should not be discussed. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I'm just responding to a question that was on there. I suppose there is an interest in that boxing specifically has had over the years very few openly gay or bisexual male boxers, and for the reasons we talked about. So I can understand why there is an interest there. Zabanu Love echoes what I said, wouldn't Google Yusuf Mack. Abdul Rahim says, White versus Joyce. Why is Joe Joyce so slow reacting and talking? I can't talk about this again because I have my opinion on Joe Joyce and whether he should continue his career. And as I found out a couple of days ago, Joe Joyce has his own opinion on this that he was quite frank in telling me. So I haven't said this to Joe, but I will no longer talk about that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong, he didn't threaten me or anything. I'm not trying to dig him out. But it's probably not right for me to make those comments. I have made those comments privately to Joe now, though, I should say. And he knows how I feel about the situation. And I'm sure he's not overly bothered. So we'll leave it at that. Nat says to DB Cooper 1, I also realised very recently when I shared it with my dad that SO have the at boxing handle, clearly the OGs. Who's the OGs? Seconds Out or me and your dad? To be discussed. Abdul Rahim says Tank versus Roach. Tank win by Tico. We're not just doing a whole prediction show, Abdul Rahim. We appreciate it, but we're talking mainly about the Riyadh season card. Teach says, what do you think about Povetkin and his record being wiped? Again, that's one for another episode. It will take up a whole segment on its own. Conveying Ideas says, the UK has had a heavyweight bisexual world champ. Awkward. We won't get into that just now either. But going back to Jack Catterall, Ayman, you said the team have got to work on it to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. What do you see as Catterall's route back? Because he's not a fashionable fighter necessarily. Who's going to give him a shot if they don't have to?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it depends what he does, really. I mean, does he stay at super light? Does he move up to welterweight, where his former rival Josh Taylor has moved to? And if he gets through Echo Esman, is that an easy fight for them to get Jack Catterall back in the mix and back in a big fight? That seems something that would probably have some legs, and I'm sure that Josh, even off the back of Jack Catterall losing this past weekend, would still want to avenge his latest or last loss to Jack Catterall. So I think that would be an easy fight to make. I don't see Jack Catterall wanting to take on someone like Azim or Dalton Smith unless Dalton does have a world title, but he might feel that they're a little bit lower down the chain than he is. But a world title opportunity might then push that into contention. It's a difficult one. He might have to find himself jumping into an opportunity that Barboza was sort of a closest fight, but it was expected that, at least in the UK, that Jack Catterall would get the victory, bearing in mind the way that Sean McComb performed against Artur Beterbiev. Two different type of fighters, but you would have thought that the way that Jack Catterall is viewed as, like I mentioned, the nullifier before, he would be able to use those sort of traits to neutralize his opponent and get the victory, even though Sean McComb did feel on this side of the pond that he did. It's difficult when you think about it. There are some exciting fights that he could be in. The likes of Sabriel Matias would be a good fight. Paro would be a good fight.
Hitchens?
Hitchens. Yeah, I mean, those are fights that they could be made, but it's just whether those opponents, like, do they want to take on Jack Catterall? Do they view it as a risk and reward, and maybe a little bit not enough reward to take on the risk in a style that it isn't the best or most exciting to watch. So it is difficult for him. Jose Ramirez, is Jose Ramirez still active? Is he still fighting? Is that a fight?
We lost to Barboza, didn't he, before the
right.
Catterall fight? So that was the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that could be kind of resurrected, I suppose.
That's right. So other than that, I do get that there is a little bit of like, where does Jack Catterall go? Does the interest drop a little bit because he's had this defeat? But what I'd counter that with is like the Manchester co-op. There was a lot of people in there. It wasn't, by no means was it a full arena, sure, but there was, from what was open, and you would have thought that maybe off the back of Michael Gomez Jr. losing, a lot of people would leave and not be there in the arena for Jack Catterall, but they did. They stayed and they cheered on Jack Catterall as much as they could towards the victory. But I think at least in Manchester, there's the want and desire, and I do as well too, to see Jack Catterall get another opportunity. He's a fighter capable of winning a world title, absolutely. He's a fighter who should have been undisputed champion, absolutely. There's still a lot of life left in Jack. It's just whether it's at super lightweight or welter.
All right, just going back to the chat, probably for one of the last times today. Nat clarifies when she talks about OG, she was referring to SecondsOut. You and Dad are just old. I mean, I'm only 5 years older than you. I hate to have a domestic here on SO Live, so I'll leave it at that. Teach says, if I'm Eddie, I'd give him an IBF title fight. Jack Catterall, that is, against Richardson Hitchens. He deserves a title shot. Arguably beat Josh Taylor and has been winning standard rankings ever since. We beat Josh Taylor twice, arguably. Beat him once officially. Zambanu Love says, there were rumours around Kell Brook and what he got up to in Tenerife. I don't think we need to go down that route. UK Hitters given his predictions for the big card. Sorry, the chat's going nuts, so I need to scroll up. Josh Buatsi beats Smith by decision. Kabayel stops Zhang. Hamzah Sheeraz beats Adames by decision. Madrimov beats Ortiz by decision. Shakur stops Schofield. Parker wins by decision. Beterbiev by decision. So he hasn't aligned himself with either myself or Ayman's raft of predictions, unfortunately. Abdul Rahim says, do you guys have your own scorecard of each fight and give your opinion and breakdown of the fight? It's not something we generally do on this show, but it's something we could do if there was enough interest in it. We do have watch-alongs for some of the big shows as well, where you can get the panel's opinions of the fight as you're watching them yourself. UK Hitters, Jose Ramirez is fighting Devin Haney on May the 2nd. Ah, well, there you go. Maybe the winner of that could be a fight for Jack Catterall, or even the loser. Mark T says, people are sleeping on kids Stone Cold Steve Austin. Fucking hell. Yeah, I like it. I like the wrestling theme that we're continuing. It started off for people that have missed it. You might want to go back and look. Radio Rahim dropped in for the first 10 minutes of the show, rocking a Ric Flair hoodie, which was a big and pleasant surprise. James Burns says, Dubois KO, Sheeraz KO, Kabayel points, Buatsi points, Ortiz points, Stevenson points. Sounds like a very points-heavy show. Beautiful Golden Dragon says, thank you. Abdul Rahim asked if anyone's going to Saudi Arabia. I assume he means in the chat, because Radio Rahim, as people know, is already there with our Frank Trevitt. Andrew Parker says, Parker for the win, namesake. I think he may also give Usyk a tough fight. Big Chunga says, keep it up, lads. Cracking stuff as always. James Byrne, Bivol points. Jack Swagger, I hope to go to Saudi one day. Oh my God. David Hyde's in the chat. David Hyde is Nat's father. Yeah. Apparently really enjoying the show. I was told privately earlier. Davey? Are we on Davey terms yet? I'm not sure. I hear that's what you were called in the family chat. Welcome, and we hope you become a regular viewer. And yeah, please don't beat me up. But moving on from that, these predictions are all over the place. So I think we should go to the result of our poll and see what most of you thought would happen in Dubois against Parker, which was the fight we started off the show talking about. Modfather Vinny, already on the ball. Yeah, so last, we'll do it in reverse order, like the old chart show, showing my age again. Daniel Dubois to win on points. Only 10% of you think that's going to happen. Joseph Parker to win by knockout. Only 19% of you think that's going to happen. Agreeing with me in second place, Parker on points, 28%. And agreeing with Ayman on 41%. Quite a sizable victory, I think it has to be said. Dubois to win by knockout. So, Ayman, you're leading this audience in your direction like a boxing Pied Piper. Not too happy about that, but I'll take it. And yeah, I'll have to live with that. But hopefully, Parker will get the job done on Saturday night, and I'll have the last laugh. But what I don't get is the last word. So before I do give that to Ayman, I just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in, whether you're part of my partner's family or not. Please do give us a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And if you're watching this on playback, you've missed the live chat, but you can still leave your comments and we will respond to some of them. And as Auditing London and the World says in the chat, the biggest winners are the fans. Ayman, try and beat that for a postscript.
I don't think I will. However, what I will say is that Seconds Out is your destination for all the latest boxing content, breaking news off of a blockbuster week in anticipation of the last crescendo. Some brilliant, brilliant fights to look forward to at the weekend. So however you're viewing it off of the different offerings of how you can view it off of different platforms, make sure that Seconds Out is the platform that you decide to keep abreast of all the news and action. Radio Rahim and Frank Trevitt leading the way over in Riyadh to bring you that boxing content and interviews. There's already a spate of interviews to go through and watch as well, with a brilliant breakdown with Andy Lee, as mentioned before. Floyd Schofield setting in some spies to find out what Shakur Stevenson is going to do. Buddy McGirt launching his game plan to get Callum Smith the victory over Joshua Buatsi, and much, much more on the way too. And look forward to, after this, I'll be speaking to Joe Parker's former trainer, Kevin Barry, who's going to give us the insights on maybe just how Joe Parker does beat Daniel Dubois also. So make sure you keep your eyes tuned to Seconds Out, hitting the like button, subscribing, hit the notification button too. We'll be here next week on the other side, giving you the review of the aftermath of those big fights. But for now, thank you from myself, Danny, Vinny behind the scenes too. We'll see you guys on the next one.